Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast, available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Tuesday, the 31st of December in London. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up today, the US Treasury Department says hackers backed by China gained access to its systems earlier this month. Europe faces higher natural gas prices in the new year as Russian supplies switch off and a cold snap looms. Plus, Arise Sir Noel, the former HSBC CEO, is knighted in the UK's New Year honours list alongside London Mayor Sadiq and Gareth Southgate. Let's start with a roundup of our top stories. The US Treasury Department says it was hacked earlier this month by Chinese-backed cyber attackers. In a letter to Congress, the Treasury said the major cyber security incident led to unauthorised accessing of workstations and unclassified documents. Bloomberg editor John Harney says the news is likely to further complicate relations between Washington and Beijing.
U.S.-China relations, which cover a vast scope of issues and agendas, et cetera, had been improving somewhat. But this, as the Trump administration is about to take office, suggests that much remains to be resolved.
Bloomberg editor John Harney says the hackers gained access via a third-party software provider, Beyond Trust, which has contracts with the US Defense and Justice Departments. In a statement, the Chinese embassy in Washington called the claims smear attacks against China without any factual basis. China's president says the economy grew by about 5% this year, signalling Beijing is on track to meet its official targets. It comes as new data showed China's services activity expanding at the fastest pace in 9 months, while the manufacturing sector grew for a third month in a row. The official non-manufacturing PMI for December rose to the slightly higher than forecast figure of 52.2, while the manufacturing reading came in at 50.1. The data adds to tentative signs that the world's second largest economy is recovering after authorities announced a raft of stimulus measures in late September. Russian natural gas flows to Europe through Ukraine are due to stop today after a transit agreement comes to an end. The continent is expected to see increased demand for gas next month with colder than usual temperatures and weaker wind levels. That'll add further strain to reserves, which are already being depleted at a faster than normal pace. European gas prices are up around 45% this year. Germany's political leaders have criticised Elon Musk for interfering in their election. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and leaders of two other main parties attacked the billionaire for his repeated public support of Germany's far-right party, the AfD. Here's German government spokesperson Christian Hoffmann speaking via translator.
It is indeed the case that Elon Musk is trying to influence the federal election through his statements. He's free to express his opinion. One does not have to share this opinion now. I think it's good to point out once again, in principle, that a voting recommendation is being made here for a party that is being monitored by the Office for the Protection of the Constitution on suspicion of being right-wing extremist, and that has already been recognised as being right-wing extremist in parts.
With less than 2 months until the election, the Conservative CDU-CSU alliance has a comfortable lead in opinion polls, with the AfD in second place and Scholz's SPD party in third. UK consumers are staying frugal, with spending barely growing all year. Barclays debit and credit card data shows spending on essentials increased by 0.9%, down from almost 4% growth last year. Bloomberg's James Wilcock has more.
You've had a bad day. Finances are tight, so you treat yourself and buy something little to perk yourself up. That's how Barclays see the UK economy in 2024. Their data shows people cutting back on both essential spending on items like food, but also big-ticket purchases and buying little luxuries to cheer themselves up. Labour's challenge is how to get these cautious consumers, who are now saving well more than the historical average, spending again. In London, James Wilcock, Bloomberg Radio.
Former HSBC CEO Noel Quinn and the boss of Rolls-Royce, Warren East, have been knighted in the UK's New Year honours list. Others recognised include London Mayor Sadiq and former England manager Gareth Southgate. Well-known broadcasters also featured, with Stephen Fry awarded a knighthood for his services to mental health.
It's obviously delightful, and one says all the things that other people say, like, my mother, who is 92, is obviously completely thrilled, and as any parent, I suppose, would be, and that's a lovely thing.
Stephen Fry there. The highest award on this year's list went to the Nobel Prize-winning novelist Kazuo Ishiguro, author of The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go. He was made a Companion of Honour. And organisers of London's New Year's Eve fireworks display say they're closely monitoring the weather conditions. That's after Edinburgh's Hogmanay street party and fireworks were cancelled due to concerns over extreme weather there. Alan Thompson from Unique Assembly, which runs the festivities, says they didn't take the decision lightly.
We've had 2 cancellations previously in the last 30 years, so it's not a regular occurrence, but it does happen. But yeah, people understand because we want to keep them safe, but they can still enjoy Edinburgh at New Year.
Alan Thompson speaking there as the UK's Met Office has issued weather warnings for wind, rain and snow across much of the country. Those are your top stories on the markets. FTSE 100 futures are down 0.25%. CAC 40 futures are 0.1% lower. CSI 300 index of Chinese shares finishing down 1.6%. Brent crude this morning 0.9 higher at $74.65. In a moment, we'll bring you more on the major cybersecurity breach at the US Treasury that's being blamed on China, plus the looming deadline for Russian natural gas supplies to Europe. But I wanted to mention another story I've been reading this morning from our opinion columnist in Tokyo, Gareth Reedy. He's been writing about the Japanese word of the year, an announcement we usually get at this time of year. That's when a panel of Japanese writers, commentators and celebrities pick a buzzword or phrase that has been introduced into the lexicon. Past winners have included Instabay, describing something that looks good for your Instagram, or Sontaku, the practice of acting on orders yet to be given. This year's choice, though, has been somewhat controversial, catching many, including Garode, by surprise. It's called Futuhodo, and it's the abbreviation of a TV show title that translates as extremely inappropriate. It's about a time-travelling teacher from an era before political correctness, but many people in Japan have never heard of it, and the internet is up in arms, as you might imagine. Garode is a great summary of that controversy, but he also offers his own suggestion for the word of the year, outen. It's a word that's long since been used to describe a vehicle rolling over, but has in recent years been adopted online in a self-deprecating manner to describe the type of shock that might cause you to, say, fall out of your chair in surprise. Garode writes that 2024 was full of events that caused us to outen. Let's hope for fewer in 2025. You can read the full piece, bloomberg.com/opinion. Let's bring you more details now on our top story and the hacking of the US Treasury Department by a Chinese state-sponsored actor. Our senior editor, Bill Ferries, joins us now for more. Bill, what do we know about this cyber attack?
Well, it seems that on December 8th, Treasury was told by this third-party software provider Beyond Trust that a hacker had gotten access to this cloud system that is used to provide technical support to the Treasury Department. The determination was that it was a state-sponsored hacker, that it was ultimately China behind this, and that the hackers may have had access to some workstations at the Treasury Department and may have accessed some unclassified documents. That said, this designation, major cybersecurity attack, that's something Treasury uses when it is a state-sponsored actor, but it doesn't sound like it was really the worst-case scenario that you can imagine for a hack of the Treasury Department.
This is the latest in a series of stories that we've heard, though, about China's hacking and espionage capabilities. How does it compare to other hacks?
Well, the really big one that's looming now in the intelligence agencies' minds is this Salt Typhoon hack of 9 U.S. telecom companies. That one is one where hackers appeared to have been in place for months, accessing all kinds of data about Americans' phone calls, and even getting a chance to hack in or attempt to hack into the phones of then presidential candidate Donald Trump, his vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, as well as Kamala Harris's team. So that seems to be a much deeper one. There are reports that aspects of that hack have continued, that the intelligence agencies haven't been able, and the phone companies haven't been able to get those hackers out of the system yet. That is the kind of attack that I think is probably much more worrying at this point, even with the news of this latest attack on the Treasury Department.
What does all of this mean for US-China relations as we count down to Donald Trump taking office?
Well, it's been a tense relationship. There's been a little bit of an improvement in that in the last couple months, but it was always going to be a very tense relationship heading into the Trump presidency. Of course, he's promised a wide range of tariffs on Chinese goods. Then again, Donald Trump will take this as he wants to. If there's a way for him to make what he thinks is a good deal and overlook some things, I think he'll take advantage of that. If he needs a reason to come down harder on China than he had planned, then this plays right into that. He, of course, has a lot of very hawkish advisors when it comes to China, but he also has Elon Musk, who has a very strong working relationship with Beijing, with his Tesla factories. So how this plays out is really something we're not going to know very well until after January 20th.
Bill, what about concerns about the security of US government departments? Beyond Trust was a contractor for several departments. Is this something that is going to be an issue in focus?
Absolutely. It's only just a few years ago you were talking about government agencies having very antiquated systems for cybersecurity. That all started to get improved, I think, after the 2016 election when there was Russian hacking of the DNC and there were other major hacks of government agencies, including the Office of Personnel Management. So there's been an improvement, but if this is going to raise questions about whether the U.S. is moving fast enough to bolster its defenses against China and countries like Russia and Iran.
Okay, Bill Ferries, thank you very much for joining us, our senior editor there, with details of that story around the hacking of the US Treasury Department. Now, Russian gas flows to the rest of Europe are due to stop at midnight as a deal which allowed gas to be transported through Ukraine expires. Slovakia's Prime Minister has called on the EU to intervene to prolong the agreement. His country remains highly dependent on supplies from Russia. We're looking at European gas prices 45% higher this year, and concerns coming in the next few months as well around how colder weather and a lack of supply from wind power might affect the energy mix in the early months of 2025. Let's bring in Stephen Shapchinsky, who leads our team of energy reporters in Asia, for more. Stephen, just bring us up to date. How important a supplier is Russia to Europe now, almost 3 years since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began, and many countries have worked to phase out the use of Russian gas?
Yeah, I mean, before the war in Ukraine began, Russia was the largest supplier of gas to Europe. Now, that has changed quite significantly. Other supply routes, other contracts have been curbed significantly. Nord Stream is no longer a viable route for gas into Europe, so that's totally off. As well, other buyers have moved to shift away. That being said, there is still gas flowing, particularly, as you mentioned, through Ukraine. 15 billion cubic meters a year moves through those Ukrainian pipelines to Europe. And that, while that is set to end at the end of the month, or today rather, it doesn't represent enough in a way that it could lead to shortages in Europe in the near term, but it does lead to price pressure. It could increase the price of gas or electricity in Europe because now European buyers will still need to find alternative supply, and more often than not, that will be liquefied natural gas, which will be pricier than the gas that they were getting via this pipes from Russia.
Is there any chance the transit deal actually gets extended?
The time, the clock is ticking. It is quite unlikely they can get something done now. And the reason why I say that is both, one, Putin had given up some public comments just over the last few days saying that it's too difficult to complete a deal this quickly. At the same time, Ukraine's Zelensky has said that he doesn't want Russia to profit off of the gas transiting their borders. So with both of those leaders saying that the deal is unlikely to be done, it isn't looking like it can happen. It can be pulled together. Now, there are alternatives that could occur over the next few weeks and months. There's a chance that they could get another supply, maybe not Russian gas, but another source of gas through those pipes. Maybe they could come to an agreement if there is some sort of ceasefire that Trump has been pushing in the conflict in Ukraine. But at this moment, an extension of this deal does seem quite unlikely.
Okay, so a lot of uncertainty about that. Add to that then the other factors involved: colder weather expected in January, and also a lack of wind power. What does that mean for the outlook and for prices in the coming months?
I mean, the gas market is finally balanced, right? There is enough storage to avoid shortages that would curtail gas to industries or households, but there could be price spikes if there is a sudden increase in demand. Now, gas demand peaks in the winter when it's used for heating. So if there is really cold weather, folks will have to use the gas to heat their homes. If there's no wind, that means that there will be less renewable energy output, where, again, you have to depend more on gas for power generation. So those things combined does increase the demand for gas. That could increase the amount of gas that is taken out of storage, therefore making gas more expensive in the spot market as traders look at how they're going to refill it later this year. So that is one element that could be bullish as well. The market will be carefully watching the ramp up of U.S. LNG exports. There are 2 projects that are ramping up output, one in Louisiana, one in Texas. And depending on how quickly they can ramp that up, that could be more supply into the market.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.